Here I am again with another set of stories, so please consider subscribing to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. And while you're at it, click the notification as well. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Story 1, Kitchen Duty. This is starting to be a long time ago now. I was working on IT support for a municipality, traveling around and fixing incidents and fulfilling requests. My team was at the office a varying amount, but I would say 80 to 100% traveling between tasks, as many who work in offices probably have experience from. The kitchen is always a mess. Coffee cups and plates just laying around. We had even bought an industrial dishwasher. Either easy to load trays. One for plates, one for bowls, and one for cups and glasses. But people are stupid/lazy, and put things on the bench or in the wrong tray. So a genius found out that we need a rotating, kitchen duty plan. So everyone has one day where they are responsible for the kitchen. This wasn't a kitchen for making food. So it was basically just a coffee machine, fridge and microwave. The list came out. And I saw my team on the list. So I immediately contact the ones responsible and explain that my team is traveling most of the day. We are rarely at the office, and usually grab a lunch while traveling, so we shouldn't be on the list. They reply that everyone will be on the list. So again raise the issue that we're not at the office. And I get a reply saying we'll just have to come to the office to take our responsibility. Here my malicious compliance kicks in, my day comes up. So I go to the office, turn on an audiobook, and take my place in the kitchen. Whenever someone came into the kitchen to place something on the counter, I would make a noise, pointing to the trays. If they put it wrong, would point to the picture of where to place the thing. I did this for 7 hours that day. I got some questions about my workload, in which I replied I had a lot to do. But I had kitchen duty, so wouldn't be able to go out to any of the incidents. After the second time I did this, and the big boss asked questions, the list was finally changed, and my team was removed. Laughing face, the person responsible for the list still thought it was unfair that we didn't have to do kitchen duty. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 2, can you hear me now? DSL tech support. This might not belong here, but it's the best place I can think of to put this. When I worked in a DSL tech support role, there was one customer classification I kept coming across. Ones who had their DSL account in a pending state. What that meant was that the phone line and the DSL was sold at the same time. The other thing it meant was that the DSL would not be turned on until the old sale was cancelled and re-entered into the system. Whenever I found someone who had their account in a pending status, I would tell them this and transfer them to sale so they could get it set up. After a while, though, management got upset at this, because it made them look bad. We were told not to tell the customer that it would never be fulfilled unless they talked to sales. Instead, we were supposed to say that the account was in pending status and, if the DSL wasn't turned on in a couple of weeks, to call back. We had customers call back for months because of this, getting more and more pissed since their DSL wasn't on. I finally got to the point where I would say, your account is in a pending status. Let me transfer you to sales to see if they know why. So even though I didn't tell them that their DSL would never come on, like we were told to do, I hopefully got them the help they needed. That was the only job I ever abandoned. It was so stressful that at least once a week we had an ambulance come get someone. One time it was me when I thought I was having a heart attack. It was just a panic attack, the first and so far only one I've had. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 3, Dyslexia wins, TLDR. I changed the price of a ham twice. Hey y'all, it's your friendly neighborhood meat counter guy. I had an order waiting for a customer who we'll call John. He ordered a whole ham. It was waiting all by its lonesome in our meat back room, untagged for some reason. I get it for him and weigh it out and the price comes to $46.31. He begins to take the ham and then asks me to cut it in half. I said, well okay sure, but the second I agree to this he says, oh could you trim it off the bone? This carving is not only something I can't do, but it's a different price. I end up throwing out the original ticket instead of tagging it, mainly because I forgot. He took the ham from me and said, "Well, I'm sorry you're such a funking idiot and can't figure out how to cut a ham. When does the butcher come back?" I told him that he comes in at 7 a.m. He leaves without additional incident, and I eventually get a call from the cashier who asks my dyslexic ass for the price. I said, 31.46. Then he said, "Really?" Which should have been an indicator. I suddenly hear the customer in the background grumbling, his Dennis the Menace Mr. Wilson grumble, as the cashier tells me that the customer doesn't think that's the right price and I better change the price. Enter MC. I thought as this was going on that the cashier questioning the price was more like an, "Oh wow, that's cheap," and I realized the price I said was way too cheap. I told him, "Hey, tell the customer I'll happily change the price for him, and he can even come with to see the price." Change. Old Man River, John, Mr. Wilson, what have you, saunters back to the meat department along with his ham in a hand basket, looking like Little Red Riding Hood, with equally naive expectations of the next few moments of his life. In comes the big bad wolf to weigh the ham. I even say what I'm ringing up as I look up the code. So whole ham, farmers, not spiral sliced. 2.49 a pound, here you go. Tag is for $46.31, which is visible to his side as well as mine. Oh, I see what happened. My bad sir, my dyslexia kicked in over the phone. It was 46.31, not 31.46. Here you go. The audible exhale of breath was enough to energize me for the rest of the shift, just like Scream Juice or whatever it is fueled Monster Inc. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 4, won't let me give you a warning? Stinks to be you, apologies for formatting, I am writing this on mobile. Also, I'm not sure whether this would be better here or in r/offmechest or r/petty revenge, but I decided to post this here first as I feel it fits here pretty handedly. This happened about a week and a half ago. I was taking a walk in a small park that has a wooded area in and a few walking trails. I decided I wanted to take the shortest path as it was getting late. About halfway through the path I saw a skunk in the middle of the path, and I am sure based on the title, most people already know where this is going. I turned around and decided it was not worth it to proceed further, and approximately halfway was enough. I exited the path the same way I entered, and as I was entering I saw an old teacher of mine from high school. Let's call her Ms. Samantha, not her real name. Ms. Samantha was a teacher that went out of her way to nitpick everything I did in her class in high school. Note it has been almost 12 years since I last saw her and 13 since I was in her class. Anyway, with the backstory aside, I went up to greet her and said, "Hello, Miss Samantha, have you been?" "Hi, I'm trying to take my daily walk down shortest path, don't bother me." "I wouldn't, you said hello, this conversation is over until I get back from my walk, or you can walk with me and we can catch up, I just want to warn. This conversation is over for now, wait until I finish my walk and we can catch up, understand, Jumping Crow Joker 24. At this point I think for a moment. I am not the type of person who would normally just let someone walk into a potential skunking, but she was just rude to me twice and did nitpick everything I did in high school, so I chose to say nothing and just took a seat at the bench nearby. See, was that so hard? We don't need to be a know-it-all, that was your issue back as a student. And Miss Samantha went down that path. As she did, I whipped out my phone and tested my parents that I'd be heading back to my childhood home a bit late. We'll help them with the dog later, but eat dinner without me. I'll be here for a bit longer. One thing to take into account is that the entrance and exit for the shortest path we have exit parallel to each other. The entrance is on one side of the bench I sat at and the other side was the exit, in this case entrance behind, exit in front, so family can wait on the bench and see their relatives exit. Normally I knew I'd see her on the way out if she'd complete the whole route, but in this case I had a feeling I'd smell her coming out first, knowing her attitude. Sadly, my instincts were spot on. As I am on my phone playing a few games, I heard Miss Samantha's voice vaguely in the background and my thought at the time was, oh no, she ran into the skunk, here we go. And I do not joke that just as I finished my thought I heard the sound of a woman yell. Maybe a scream, I couldn't really make that out 100%, but the wind was blowing my way so I was downwind of the path, the skunk and her, so it wasn't long before I could smell what happened. Miss Samantha did eventually come out from the path's exit, and the smell she was emitting was awful. It reminded me a bit of raw horseradish getting peeled, as it was really eye-watering. Ugh. She moaned. I tried to warn you about that skunk. I figured it out when I got sprayed. You knew I'd react like that, didn't you? I shrugged. I wagered a guess, yeah. By the way, mind taking a few steps downwind? So it is easier to talk. After that she gave me her phone number and asked me to contact her when I planned to come back. She hoped it wouldn't be when she was still reeking in skunk odor. As I said at the beginning of this tale, it has been a week and a half. She still has some lingering skunk smell. I found out that up until that moment she was doing okay as well, but she also told me she got sprayed twice. When I asked her why she did not turn back after being sprayed the first time, she told me if she already got sprayed and was going to smell like skunk anyway, she wanted to complete her walk. A fun little anecdote is that after everything she admitted she was being petty, and when I told her I still wanted to study the foreign language she taught and took some classes in college, she told me that if I ever wanted to practice to let her know, and she'll do it without the pettiness this time. To be honest, I think the skunking humbled her quite a bit, and hopefully she won't be forced to deal with residual linger odor much longer. But anyway, thanks for reading. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 5. Boss took credit for my work. Malicious compliance occurred. A few years ago I was hired as a manager to create the contracts department of a tech startup. My boss was on an opposite coast as me and we barely spoke. About a year in, the company hired consultants to overhaul depths except for contracts because it was running so smoothly. I was truly proud of this. The company sent me on a paid trip to the Bahamas as a thank you. After I got back from vacation, I asked for a raise to director level. My boss said I just wasn't there. I asked for a list of what I would need to do to be director. He sent me a list which was everything I was already doing and basically admitted that if I was director he would no longer be able to take credit for my work. Friends told me I needed to either leave or put up and shut up. Instead, I chose to kill with kindness. I wholeheartedly apologized to my manager for overstepping, and said that I am going to step back into the manager role. I printed out the manager responsibilities and posted them to my desk. Things went south quicker than I could have imagined. We started missing sales targets. Product said my boss agreed to a term in an agreement that would completely destroy their budget and product rollout. My boss didn't know commission agreements and let sales manipulate contracts, so we were paying commission on contracts with termination clauses. I only interjected once to stop a contract amendment from being approved because my boss was unknowingly letting a VP artificially inflate sales numbers. The controller and CFO had to get involved. Eventually the CEO was called in. Stories started circulating about my boss holding stress balls and cursing in meetings. I was more relaxed than ever, and during my newfound free time at work I studied for and obtained professional certifications. I would also leave work early to get to the gym before it got busy. About a month after I unloaded my added responsibilities, my boss gave me a 7% bonus. It was unspoken, but I could tell he wanted me to take back on the director responsibilities without the title, but I continued to follow the manager description to a T. 6 months later, after taking 10 days of my unlimited PTO, I was included in layoffs. Took 3 months off and then got another job at a 35% salary increase. While I am happy to be making more money, I truly loved the company and people I worked with, and it's defeating to watch someone continually take credit for your work. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 6. Stripped of manager position. Okay, I can do that. This happened decades ago, but after reading another MC I figured I'd post this. I was a manager of a programming department. I initially had 5 programmers reporting to me, and I was able to spend half of my time programming and half managing. I had always gotten exceeds or far exceeds expectations on my annual reviews. About 10 years later my team had 25 people and I was spending less and less time programming. Fast forward a few years and I missed 2 months during the year for a surgery and hospital stay, and in my annual review my boss, who knew nothing about programming, told me I was not doing a good job and the programming department was missing deliverable dates, probably because I was in the hospital. They wanted me to go back to just programming, and I was stripped of my manager and only focus on programming. I was pissed off, but I told him that I can do that. I told my former staff what had happened and told them to direct all questions to my boss, who knew zero about programming. He was overwhelmed, and soon senior management figured out that my boss was the problem, not me. They canned him and replaced him with the VP of programming in the UK. I am in the US. She was great since she started as a programmer and was an excellent boss in general. Since I was just a programmer now, all of the managers were in the UK, and I told my former staff to direct all questions to their new bosses in the UK. Since there was 6-hour time difference and we only overlapped 2 or 3 hours each day, that made getting questions answered in a timely fashion quite difficult. In the meantime, my health wasn't the best, and my doctor told me I should go to a 4-day/32-hour work week so my health wouldn't continue to suffer. Since my employer was a strict 40-hour week company, I looked for another job and got 8 job offers in about a month. I was ready to resign. Finally, after a few months, my new boss asked me to be a manager again because of the time difference between US-UK and because I'm most experienced as a programmer in the company. Instead, I gave her my resignation and explained why. She asked me what it would get me to stay, and I told I wanted a 10% raise and wanted to work 4-day/32-hour work. I gave her 24 hours to respond. She spoke to higher-ups and finally came back the next day and agreed. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 7, I'm not allowed to break the rules? Okay then, this happened to me a while back, but just came back to me. I used to work for an armored car company. Something I did for a few years when I was in university and waiting for a position in what would be my future career. It was good money, and lots of people did it as their full-time jobs, but I wanted more out of life than a mindless job. Because I was classified as part-time, I did not have a set shift. I mostly covered for people when they were sick, took vacation, worked unscheduled shifts, or worked shifts created specifically for part-timers. All in all, I was working full-time hours almost every week. Most of the full-timers loved working with me. The way the company worked, you were set for a 13-hour shift, however if you managed to complete your run is less than that, you'd still get paid the full shift. I was young, moved fast, and didn't care about breaks if it meant I could get paid for 3 to 4 hours to sit at home instead of working. So whenever I took over for someone older, who was just on autopilot, I could get their coworker home in a fraction of the time. One of the full-time workers, a real Karen, let's call him Kyle, was just the worst. For some reason he took it upon himself to tattle on people for anything that he didn't like. If someone weren't wearing their collared shirt under their sweater, run to tell management. FYI, working in the summer heat in a literal metal box wearing a bulletproof vest makes you want to shed layers. Someone wearing black instead of blue pants. Tells management. Someone wearing a company hat that has the company logo but is not official uniform. Tells management. No one in the company liked Kyle. Well, one week Kyle's coworker has taken vacation, and my boss schedules me to replace him. The run is pretty easy. It's commercial day shift, so 90% of the stops are retail stores with less than a few $100 in cash. Because of the amount of money, no one has ever had a problem with one person jumping out and running in, grabbing the money and coming back, while the second person, usually the driver, stays with the truck. In this shift, I was the driver, so that's what I did. When Kyle was in the store, I would just navigate my phone, look at the people in the area, make sure there were no threats, make sure I wasn't parked in anyone's way, mostly wasting time. Well, one stop, Kyle came back and I was just finishing up writing an email. Apparently Kyle wasn't too happy with me taking a few extra seconds to start going. To unbeknownst to me, took a picture of me behind the wheel on my phone. I had no idea until the next shift came the next day, where management came to talk to me about texting and driving. I told them I had no idea what they were talking about, and my manager just said that he had proof I was doing it, and if I did it again, I would be written up. I went to talk to another coworker who is also the union rep to figure out what the hell was going on, and he told me Kyle took a picture of me yesterday and complained that I was doing it. I was pissed. Cue malicious compliance. My shifts with Kyle were 3 13-hour shifts, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Well, today was now Thursday, our last shift of this run, and this shift was not retail pickups, it was the run that takes all the money collected from the previous week and brings it to our provincial depot about 400 kilometers away. The entire run only has about 30 minutes of work and about 9 hours of driving. If you did the math, this is one of those runs where if you get it done quickly, if traffic is on your side, you can get paid for a lot of unworked time. It was also the last shift of the week, which meant a long gorgeous weekend in the middle of summer as soon as we were done. Well, I was going to make sure this shift lasted as long as possible. If he didn't want me to break any rules, I'd make sure I obliged. I drove exactly the speed limit the entire way. I even stopped for our 1-hour lunch break, which is given to us, but I had not witnessed anyone take in the years I'd been here because of the rules we had about pay. In fact, we were so behind. We reached the major city our depot was located in right at rush hour, something our early start time was designed to prevent. All in all, what should have taken about 9 hours to do, ended up taking 14. An extra 5 hours where he just had to sit there and watch me in silence. To make things sweeter, a few times during the shift he had to call his wife and let he know he wouldn't be home early enough to go to the cottage and they would have to leave the next day instead. I heard from other workers how furious he was and how I'd ruined his plans for the weekend, and all I could do was smile. To clarify, where I live, going 15 to 20 kilometers per hour above the speed limit is standard. Going to speed limit will just get someone smashing into your rear bumper. Also, our trucks have a max speed of 105 kilometers per hour, and most the drive is either 80 kilometers per hour or 100 kilometers per hour. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. Story 8, we have to take apart the old displays? Okay, in 1989, I worked for the planogram team for my local Target. We set up/took apart store displays and fixtures, which included product label updates, and building out new display models. In February, we were assigned 6 weeks of overnight shifts to completely gut and then replace the home goods and furniture, hardware/automotive, and toys departments. Management promised us extra help, and plenty of time to take down the huge furniture flats and rebuilds in the home goods, which had heavy display models and were elevated onto huge precast shelves. Anyone who's ever worked retail knows what I'm referring to. Management did nothing. And our new plans for the displays were to be given to us before we even started, and they were continually late. Toys and hardware/automotive were fine. We finished those, with no extra help, within a day of when they were to be finished. The home good and furniture plans were given to my boss at the start of our shift, along with the deadline of having everything finished in one night, which meant removing the old display models, taking them in tubs to the trash compactor, removing the shelves, along with the industrial carpet that was glued to the shelves, and clean the shelves before they were shipped off to another store, taking apart the furniture for the trash compactor so it would be easier to destroy in the compactor, building the new furniture displays and putting them up on the new furniture flats. We were promised that we'd have 4 to 6 employees help us that night, since a lot of the furniture was heavy bookshelves and desks. We got all. My supervisor, Dolores, was pissed, and rightly so. We were left with a note to get all of that work done within our allotted shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Conveniently, the GM and other AMs were gone for the night, and no one answered Dolores's calls. Dolores was a big woman. Former Army vet, 6 feet 2 inches tall, and built like a tank. I'd never seen her so angry, or even angry, until that night. There were only 5 of us to do the work of 10 to 12 people. I watched Dolores climb up on one of the furniture flats, wait a moment, then while looking straight into the security camera, kicked a fake cherrywood end table off the flat, and then jumped down on the flat. It splintered into several pieces. She then proceeded to stomp those pieces into many little pieces. "OP," she said, "what did it say to do with the old display models?" I checked the list. It says to disassemble them and then take the pieces to the compactor so they'll be easier to compact. Dolores gestured to the flats. "Team, that's what we're going to do." So, I climbed up and knocked down a 3-shelf particle board bookcase with a fake walnut finish. It fell flat. I then jumped on the back of the case, and broke through the particle board back. I then took my hammer and started smashing the sides of the bookcase. It came apart instantly. For the next 45 minutes, we climbed up on each one of those furniture flats, knocked down the displays, and destroyed them all. We had so much fun. It was extremely therapeutic. We then swept up the remains, and put them into 2 tubs, and left them by the compactor. We did manage to get the old displays down, and put the new ones up. We were unable to remove the carpet from the old shelves, as it was glued down, and we didn't have any solvents to use. We also left the new displays in their boxes, as there was no time to put them together. Dolores waited until the morning AM showed up, and then tore the guy a new one before leaving. When I came to work that night, the new furniture was already put together and up on the new displays. We were also given an apology by the regional manager, who Dolores called that day to let him know we'd been screwed over with an impossible deadline, and given a free pizza dinner for our trouble. I left Target 2 months later, and moved out of state. Dolores retired 6 months later. Thank you for tuning in. Kindly subscribe the channel and support me to keep me motivated for creating content and bringing it to you for your entertainment. And while you're at it, click the notification as well. This is all for now. See you again in the next video.